father's benedictions and a few more jokes by Norm are all that stands between you and hearing Sleepy Man. Reception, I want to put in a plug for that in the Black Box Theater, and we're going to join them for a little bit of music later too. Certainly want to thank the Board of Trustees, especially Herr Wolfgang Gestaltenbauer. My ability to pronounce his name, I think, was what got me this job. The other board members present, of course, Ross Reichert. And I thought, well, during your speech, you know, I could really cut some time out by saying what she said. As my speech. And Mayor DiGiovanni, Bishop Scholl, former Presidents Barbara Luthwig, Stephanie Bennett Smith. A great honor to be walking in your very serious footsteps. And including among my fellow presidents, of course, Amanda Deppa. And I never called you the little president. Faculty, staff, students, Tom and Anthony from the Staff Council and Faculty Senate. And by the way, both Tom and Anthony work at the School of Professional Studies, so the idea that our staff and our faculty pick them as their leaders is a real tribute to what's going on out there. I also want to thank our guests, many guests who've come, a couple in particular, my brother Matt, and his lovely wife Sarah. So he used to beat me up. And my brother Tim, who's my youngest brother, born 10 years after me to the day. That's Catholic family planning for you. And his wife, and a couple of surprise guests, Pat Beaver and Bob White, otherwise known as Quail. Pat Beaver used to be the head of the, retired now, is the head of the Center for Appalachian Studies at Appalachian State University, where Lisa got her master's degree under her mentorship. Bob's also a musician, been picking with him many times, so thank you so much for coming here. And also a special thanks to the Office of University Advancement and all the many volunteers for planning this event. They all have much more important things to do than this, and they really put the time aside to plan this event. And especially a shout out to the Centenary Stage Company. I mean, hearing that little bit from Into the Woods, the professional productions here and the student productions are absolutely incredible. In fact, sometimes you'll see that the only difference between the Centenary Stage Company in Lackland Center and Broadway is it doesn't cost $40 to park here. Because the entertainment is just as good and extremely professional, so thank you. And of course, a very special thanks to my wife and presidential co-conspirator. You know, she got me the job as the English department at Appalachian State, too. They said, well, you know, he's pretty good. You should meet his wife. So I have heard a lot to thank her for. Many, many things, much more than I can say here. So do join us after this. Actually, Matt, my brother, oldest brother Matt's a fiddle player. He and I lived together in a van in Germany for a year in the 70s, being street musicians. We've kind of gotten over that now, but what happened in the van? What happened in the backstage of the van? So, but anyway, Matt's going to pick a couple tunes with Lisa and me and Sleepy Man too. And Sleepy Man is the Mazzone brothers, the three Mazzone brothers, two of whom they're such a young band. The two who are actually of college age. They're banjo players, freshmen in high school. But Tommy and Robbie Mazzone are freshmen at Centenary, doing a great job here. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite few lines of my favorite poet, William Wordsworth. Our destiny, our being's heart and home is with infinitude and only there. With hope it is, hope that can never die, effort and expectation and desire, and something evermore about to be. It's from the Prelude, Book 6. And these are good words to live by, and I'll come back to them in a minute. But first I'd like to note, you know, there are very few little boys, and thanks to a glass ceiling that just cracked and not broken, even fewer little girls who are sitting out in the Midwest, where I come from, dreaming of their future, saying, you know, someday I want to be the president of a small, tuition-driven university beset with economic challenges and a public that questions the value of higher education in general and the large community. There just aren't that many people in rural Minnesota doing that. So why would somebody want this job? And I've been trying to figure this out. But here's my history. When I was studying English literature in Scotland, during a very transformative study abroad here, and boy, there's nothing better, I decided I wanted to become a college professor, or at least have a reason not to leave college. So I went and got a PhD, and faculty jobs were very scarce in 1980, as they are now. So I moved to Boston to play with a semi-professional bluegrass band. Now, bluegrass bands don't make much money then, and they still don't make much money now, with the possible exception of the zones. So I landed a day job teaching at a private high school near Boston. Well, I talked at a lot of meetings, I volunteered to do a lot of things, and they soon made me the dean of students. If you raise your hand often enough, you become an administrator. Now to many, and we have Carrie Mullins is our dean of students here, the best dean of students I've ever worked with. She can attest to that that's very much a thankless job. We actually, at the Cambridge School, we had some true helicopter parents. I actually had a parent who was a Hollywood actor once threatened to land a helicopter on a soccer field. It's absolutely true. But what I discovered in that job was that working with a group of smart people trying to make an educational institution work was absolutely the best job in the world. I mean, I had more fun doing that than I ever dreamed I would. And I still feel that way 35 years later, especially as I work with my current executive team here at Centenary, sharing, to hark back to the Wordsworth quote, undying hope, along with plenty of effort, expectation, and desire for Centenary's future. But why be a president? And why at Centenary? And it was really only a couple of years ago that I started looking at presidencies. I had worked as somewhat of a change agent under several excellent and some less excellent presidents. Ross, you were one of the excellent ones. But even under the excellent ones, I often felt that things weren't moving exactly in the direction or with the velocity that I wanted them to move. So one night, my very wise wife Lisa said, why don't you just become a president instead of complaining about them? So we started on the adventure, and a presidential search is an adventure that ultimately led to Hackettstown. And Lisa and I have always been full partners in our many adventures, but the president-spouse relationship is more intense than most as a working relationship, and we knew we would need to jump into the deep end of the pool head first. And we check the distance to the bottom first, but why Centenary? And that decision was actually the easy one. Look at our outcomes with the third highest four-year graduation rate in New Jersey, second only to that little place south of here called Princeton for private institutions, 95% job placement rate. As we've heard from many of our speakers, it's a university, college, collegiate institute that has adapted to the times throughout its history and remains attuned to the needs of today's learners amid many economic and cultural changes. And the ethnic and cultural diversity of the region and the nation are reflected in Centenary's student population. With career-focused programs combining the traditional liberal arts, Centenary recognizes that both employers and society at large need people with specialized training, but also a broad set of interpretive and communicative skills, easy for you to say, and a global perspective. With changing from a college to university, Centenary has remained committed to small classes, close student-faculty interaction, collaborative learning, committed to engaging with the community, locally, regionally, and globally. As a Methodist-related institution, but one that embraces all faiths, we promote intellectual inquiry and we foster the scholar-athlete model of NCAA Division III athletics. Let's give a shout to our athletes here. Come out to a lacrosse game or a baseball game or softball game, and get off those crutches so you can get back on the field. So with great teams and wonderful interaction between the faculty and the coaches, so student athletics here is great. I spent 12 years at Auburn University. The student athlete was kind of a different sort of concept there. And we get all this in a classic small town surrounded by the natural beauty that our first president noted and that Roz talked about. But we're only a short train ride from Manhattan. I mean, who would want to live anywhere else, you know? That's enough about me. I really want to spend the rest of my short time here talking about what I see as the current needs of higher education in general and small, private, not-for-profit institutions like Centenary in particular. So here are the things I think we need to focus on, all of which are embedded in our evolving strategic plan. And actually they echo a lot of what Roz talked about, even though we hadn't planned this together. One of the things we need to do, but these are a little different from some things you'll hear from colleges and universities. We need to learn from other people, other organizations, about how to be a healthy organization, how to be an efficient organization. There's understandable resistance to comparing a university to a business, especially if the comparison narrowly defines students as consumers, which is way too narrow. But there are many organizations now that have successfully adapted to our changing world, and higher education has been slow to learn from those efforts, but not here. Our strategic planning process follows human-centered design thinking has developed at Stanford's design school and elsewhere. Many organizations have discovered that, especially manufacturers even, that they're not so much designing products as designing human experiences that require constant innovation. This is one of the reasons Apple is so successful. And they've developed successful strategies for doing so. Well, guess what? Universities have been in the business of designing human experiences for about 900 years, so we should be the experts in how to design them. But we can also use what others have learned in this area. We also need to become more efficient in response to what is a permanent reduction, I think, of both personal and governmental resources to support higher education. So we're learning all about Toyota lean practices. We're not going to build cars, but we're going to eliminate the unnecessary steps in our processes, which is what that's all about. And efficiency and innovation require constant attention to how we're doing, so we're experimenting with the balanced scorecard, which has been very successful in many businesses as a very holistic assessment tool. The second thing is innovation and adaptability. This is something Roz mentioned too. And as you can see from the history of Centenary, just printed in your program, we have a long history of that, adapting to regional needs, economic conditions, and educational institutions, as has been pointed out on the stage before today, are not generally known for this. The get-up I'm wearing right now was originally designed to ward off the chills at Oxford and Cambridge in medieval times. Now, it's so cool to wear, but it's not really new fashion. But one of the chief advantages of an institution like Centenary is, for one thing, we're not beholden to state systems. We generate our own revenue, and because we are founded before the state's educational bureaucracy, we can develop new programs quickly. And we're leveraging this ability to innovate not because innovation is good for its own sake, but because we have to prepare students for a world that doesn't exist yet. And I often tell prospective students, for example, they're likely to have 7 different careers in their working life, and the last career won't have been invented during their first career. So, how do you train for that? So the world is changing, but so is the group of potential students that we serve. One of our strategic goals is to recruit and serve students who do not yet know that they should go to Centenary. That's the easy one. That's why we have a marketing department. But even more importantly, who don't yet know that they would benefit from what the university has to offer. And from that perspective, I'm less worried about Centenary getting a larger share of the pool of traditional college-going students, a pool that we all know is shrinking quicker in New Jersey than most places. I'm less interested in that than I am tracking down what remains a very large group of potential students of all ages whom we can effectively serve, but who don't know that yet, who don't know that what Centenary has to offer, whether it's a certificate, a badge, a degree, who don't yet know that would be something they would really benefit from. Rochelle Michaela Goodman, Centenary trustee and alum who raises money for a well-known university a little over 40 miles south of here, says this: Princeton students already know they're extraordinary. Centenary students don't yet know that they're extraordinary. I think that's a pretty profound statement about our students here. And incremental change is no longer good enough. Joanne Soliday of the Credo Institute says in a forthcoming book, instead of changing incrementally, we need to leapfrog ahead. We need to get to the next place. But innovation is all the more difficult if the future is not merely an extension of the past, and that's also no longer true. So this is why human-centered design thinking takes a deep dive into how to provide constituents what they don't yet know they need. Now, as we do this planning process, one of our favorite quotes, it's probably a fake quote, fake news, but I don't think Henry Ford actually said this, but it's still a great quote. If he had asked people what they needed in transportation, they would have said faster horses. In other words, what we want to do is get to automobiles rather than for just faster horses. So whether you're talking about products, organizations, or social structures, one of the ways to do that is through the attributes, skills, and knowledge. Yes, that's the ask, Deirdre. The attributes, skills, and knowledge, and the embedded and critical and creative thinking fostered by the traditional liberal arts, which are alive and well at Centenary in vivid and practical ways. And the two most important facets of such an education are creativity and what I call interpretive competence. I talked about this in my Larry Apron talk on hermeneutics. So the creativity involved in writing a poem, acting on the stage, designing a dress. Our great fashion department just did a 150 years of fashion show. Or designing a scientific experiment. That creativity prepares our students to leapfrog ahead to what Wordsworth called something ever more about to be. And our commencement speaker this year is going to be Rita J. King, who's one of the few people I know that actually has on her business card, futurist. That is her job, she's a futurist. She helps organizations from NASA to the movie industry imagine the future. And we often give honorary degrees to our commencement speakers, which is much easier on the budget than a hefty speaking fee. But this degree is very special. We're recommending to our board, they have to prove this, that we give her the degree of Doctor of Applied Imagination. A fitting tribute to the combination of imaginative thought and practical application that characterizes both her work and Centenary as an institution that instills creative thought and has a 95% job placement rate. Now, interpretive competence is a little harder to explain. It includes, but it's more comprehensive than what we call critical thinking. And as Anthony Uculo pointed out, his new word of the day, well, much of my scholarly career was spent thinking about hermeneutics, the philosophy and history of interpretation. And the philosophers I really admire characterize, and I won't name and quote them all, you'll be happy to know, but they characterize interpretation as an ongoing, historically embedded process of open-ended conversation that remains sensitive to multiple points of view. At its best, an interpretation is a conversation with another person, a work of art, with history, or with a problem that starts one place and ends in a place that could not have been imagined by either partner in the conversation. It's what William Wordsworth meant when he used the expression in another poem, Tintern Abbey, to see into the life of things. It's that magical moment in the literature classroom when students take a conversation far beyond what the professor expects. Or the meeting, and yes, some meetings can be fun, or the meeting whose result is a new program that no one envisioned when he or she walked into the meeting. I've been in meetings with my executive staff where we've had that experience. It's pretty cool. So this is why I often tell, and this, that kind of effort, that interpretive competence, I'd say, is another way to leapfrog over the faster horses to get to the automobile. So I often tell my scholar friends that I've not moved to the dark side of administration, despite what you might say. I'm simply practicing applied hermeneutics. That's what I call it. And in the hermeneutic tradition, interpretation is based on what Aristotle called phronesis, or practical wisdom engaged with the world. And that is the kind of wisdom very much needed in this anti-intellectual age. The other thing we need is collaboration. And I really want to thank many of my fellow college presidents from both the community college and the four-year college world who've joined us today. And they've heard me say this, most of them. If we're going to survive, we need to look beyond the gates on Jefferson Street. We need to look to the streets of Hackettstown, northern New Jersey, the state, the nation, and the world. Now, we do this in many ways. Close relations with industries such as Major League Sports provide students with very valuable internships and ultimately careers. In fact, Lisa and I recently met 5 of the 6 alumni from Centenary working with the Brooklyn Nets, which actually got us courtside seats to a game that the Nets actually won. So it's really an unusual experience all around. And our students don't just learn experiences to be applied later. Because of these collaborations, they gain real-world experience doing things upon which they can build their lives and careers. Our School of Professional Studies in Parsippany, with its wonderful new building, is pursuing some of our most creative collaborations. For example, by developing partnerships that will provide industry with flexible credentials, degrees, training, but also consultation on their own processes. And at a recent panel at a conference on higher education and industry sponsored by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, I argued, prompted actually by the NJBI leadership, that the educational institutions also need to partner with each other. And fellow presidents, we need to do this. We need to leverage our shared resources, especially when technology makes that so easy. And we need to provide, and we need to do this while keeping our autonomy as institutions. We need to provide our students with a much more efficient and robust education than we can provide them individually, as individual institutions. For example, we're working on a seamless path to transfer, linking high school, vocational school, community college, and four-year college in ways that provide students with a clear path to the education that they need through multiple institutions. Centenary's been doing this for a long time, but we're really trying to ramp that up. We're also talking to other small private colleges about how to leverage complementary resources for joint degree programs, study abroad opportunities, honors education, all sorts of things. So that collaboration is really important. And of course, one of our most important collaborations, something I talked to Maria Giovanni about a lot, is with the surrounding community, the local community, and all the way to the global community. As has been pointed out, we have one of the nation's oldest community service requirements, and we're enhancing that with many more opportunities for community engagement, service learning, entrepreneurial connections with local businesses, and international service learning. We're building on an ethos that does things like this, sends the wrestling team out to shovel residents' sidewalks in town. And boy, those wrestlers can shovel much faster than I could ever dream of shoveling. And the wrestling team also initiated an anti-bullying campaign. And we also recently supported a group of students to the Dominican Republic to provide shoes for underprivileged children through the Souls for Souls program. So the value of these experiences goes beyond what students learn and how individual communities benefit. Now we boomers, and I am a boomer, we produce some good things. Positive social activism, the expansion of higher education, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, James Taylor. But while we did that, or actually after we did that, is what happened. We are also responsible for corporate greed, aggressively divided politics, and an economy in which the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So the current generation of college students, I'm sorry to say this, that they have to do this, but they have a lot of work to do to fix all this. So what I often do is ask new students 4 questions, and these seem to resonate with them. Number 1 is, what kind of a world do you want to live in? And I've never heard one say, this one's just fine, doesn't need any change. Never heard that. So number 1, what kind of world do you want to live in? Number 2, what needs to change in order for that world to come into being? Number 3, this is getting to an individual student, in what part of that change do you want to be involved? And number 4, and it's really at this 4th and last stage that we come in, what do you need to learn in order to be the change that you want to be involved in? What do you need to learn in order to accomplish your part of that change? And many of our students come to us ready to change the world. So we need to fuel that passion where it exists, and where it does not yet exist, we need to inspire it. And I have watched, that this is I'm preaching to the choir with this faculty, they know that. And this is what it means to be a private college with a public purpose, which is what we are. The institution has a responsibility, and I think Roz Reichert's term, a sacred trust, is really good here. We have a responsibility to serve the world, and that is a responsibility that's indistinguishable from the inspiring, world-changing work our students do. The institution and the students join together with that. Arguments about public funding for college often revolve around the question of whether college is a private good that benefits the economic and personal well-being of individual students, or a public good benefiting society as a whole. Now, most of my career has been in public institutions whose very existence is premised on the notion, though, as my friends from North Carolina can attest, under attack recently, that higher education is a public good. But the mission of Centenary, like that of other New Jersey private colleges and universities founded on, many of them founded on Catholic principles, or in our case, Methodist ideals of service, is also squarely focused on education as a public good. Now, one of the newest buzzwords in higher education is pivot, as in to pivot on something. And this entered the business vocabulary in discussions of how companies such as Twitter and Groupon and YouTube had to change course radically before they succeeded. But there's another sense of pivot that emerges in terms such as pivotal, which means of crucial importance to the development of something else. And that emphasizes not just the action of swinging around a pivot to go somewhere else, but the fixed point around which something pivots. So Centenary does need to pivot. Centenary needs to pivot toward innovative programs, collaboration, global citizenship, organizational health and efficiency, and serving new kinds of students. And in our strategic design process, we use a very specific definition of strategy as a change in behavior needed to achieve a result that cannot be achieved by business as usual. So we're about change, we're about innovation, we're about pivoting. But we need to pivot around the fixed point of our mission, which is pivotal to our students' development, and reads in part, this is another part, where Roz and I read different parts of the mission. The Centenary experience is distinguished by a fundamental belief in the full potential of each student, a strong liberal arts foundation, career preparation, a culture of service to the community and the world. Now, we're very lucky because many small colleges need to pivot away from their current missions in order to survive. Centenary just needs to pivot toward a future that's unknown, but which will always need a mission like ours. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you all.
all of you. But thank you, students.
Yes.
You're the reason we're here.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming out.